Hello, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. I'm just going to wait for another minute or so before we get started here. All right, great. I see we've got some participants here, got some attendees. So again, happy International Women's Day, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Zahara Foyston, and I'm a consultant at CSPN. I wanted to welcome everybody to our annual Women's Day event. So thank you so much for joining us today. As many of you know, today gives us the opportunity to celebrate the social, cultural, economic, and political achievements of women all around the world. It also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality and equity. So this year's Women's Day theme is Embracing Equity, and at CSPN, we are very excited to have you with us during this interactive fireside chat for the next hour, where we can explore this theme a little bit more. So what better way to do this than with our guest, Tara Wilson. I wanted to extend a very warm welcome to Tara. We are so happy to have you with us today. Tara is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Diversity Officer at Zūm Rails, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, advocacy, and its significance in enhancing self-confidence, navigating difficult situations, and negotiation. I'll also add a link to her LinkedIn in the chat for anybody wanting to connect. So for the audience throughout the session, if you don't mind keeping your microphone muted, please feel free, however, to ask the questions throughout the presentation. So there is a Q&A feature as well as a chat feature. So I'll be going through all of those questions at the end. But yeah, feel free throughout the session to add your questions to those areas. So Tara, welcome. And we're so happy to have you with us. Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much. Excited to be here to have some chats about equity and all that goes with it.
Yeah, us too. So to kick us off, you've had a wealth of experience in senior roles surrounding organizational transformation and brand growth. To help our audience get to know you a little bit better, can you share a brief overview of your career path and the journey that brought you to where you are today?
Sure, thank you. I started, I guess, my professional journey, especially in the service industry or contact service space, many years ago at a company called Minix, which was outsourced by Apple Computers. So I had the opportunity to do cool things like work on the very first iPod. People don't even know what it is anymore. And then, worked on some of the legacy computers. Even then, which is over 20 years ago, the support that Apple gave and their knowledge management systems and the way that they supported their employees, I found was to be exceptional. And it really helped me learn a lot about the importance of knowledge management and having repeatable, accessible, reliable processes. And then from there, I that was in a very small town in Ontario, Canada. And then I moved to Montreal. In all transparency, I followed a boy to Montreal. I'm not with said boy anymore, but and I found a role working in the fintech space and got myself a data entry job. And when I started that role and started to learn about payment processing and fintech in general, I really became passionate about it. And started, as mentioned, in data entry. And then there was other positions that became available. And I didn't think that I was going to stay in Montreal very long and in that space very long. So I decided I'd just get the best out of everything that I could. I sat in all the seats. I really wanted to understand kind of the pillars of the business. So it's customer support and then technical support. I was building terminal files. I started to manage more operational items like the contact center, loyalty, retention, and grew with the company for quite some time. And after being there for a while, my leader, who is a SVP, ended up leaving. And I remember reaching out to the organization and saying, as a director, hey, I'm ready for that next step. And unfortunately, I was met with, we'll put you on some kind of plan. We don't think you're ready yet. And there wasn't a lot of executive women in the space. And I didn't feel confident that I was actually going to be able to grow. So as serendipity will have it, that same week I had a recruitment team reach out to me for a VP of operations role, which was the role I was looking to grow into. So, I took that as a sign and jumped in there, and then spent some time as the VP of operations at another organization. Started off, managing Canada, and ended up, growing my team there and managing the UK as well. So it was a great opportunity. And then eventually I moved to a division that I had no idea anything about. It was quite scary for me. It was, affiliate marketing, and kind of was pitched, hey, it's all operations that they need. And when I went in, it wasn't. It was a lot of tech. And so, it was a great opportunity to really manage, the full business. I had development and finance and sales and marketing and integrations and product reporting into me. I was responsible for the budget and the P&L. I remember people were talking about, EBITDA in a meeting, and I was like Googling what it meant. I had an idea, but I didn't really know. And so it was a wonderful opportunity for me to grow and to learn and to do something that was very scary. And then more recently, just at the end of, I guess it was, just a little over a year now, I've been with Zūm Rails, which is a startup, and I'm in my second year there as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Diversity Officer.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your background. It sounds like you've just had a wealth of experience all across the business. And it was really great that you got that opportunity to kind of accelerate that kind of leadership role that you were looking for into a company that kind of like provided you the opportunities to be able to do that. So that's really amazing. So when it comes to the idea of equality, for myself, that means thinking about what some of those conscious decisions are we can make to recognize what those kind of personal unconscious biases are. And from there, understanding what actions we can start to make in order to see change. So can you share an example of when or how you made a positive impact to remove unconscious bias and inequality in your personal or professional life, or an example from someone that you respect?
Sure. I think it can be as simple as starting off and being aware of what unconscious bias is. Educating yourself on the topic and then taking action. It really has to start with yourself. To me, that's the most positive impact that anyone can make to remove it. So I took a quiz about what is unconscious bias, because it was being discussed, and I thought I knew what it was, but I didn't really know. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to take the opportunity to learn more and understand. And so I learned, from that quiz about blind hiring, about the importance of asking the same question to every single candidate, regardless of where the direction of the interview goes. And I learned about how important awareness training is. And bias doesn't just show up during hiring, it shows up during meetings, it shows up during promotions, it shows up during team gatherings, and whether you're being included or not, performance reviews, development and coaching, and just overall satisfaction. So I think learning about how unconscious bias shows up in the workplace is very important for leaders and people managers in the business, and also, good colleagues. And to remove it, we need to understand it and learn about our own biases, and try to recognize where it lives inside of your organization. And learning about your own bias really just has to do with paying attention to our thoughts, and paying attention and examining our beliefs and our assumptions. I think, it's hard sometimes to normalize this conversation, because people feel uncomfortable talking about, hey, I have a bias, or I didn't realize I had this bias. And that's part of it too, is we have to start talking about it to know about it. And awareness training is a great place to start. So, one of the initiatives that I've worked on in the past is bringing awareness training to the organization, understanding how to pay attention to our thoughts and hear the way we are conducting ourselves in our mind when we're doing an interview, when we're in a meeting and we're not calling on that person that doesn't ask question, and why we're not doing that, and just try to listen and to be self-aware. Yeah, awareness training is really important. So, removing the bias can start just right from hiring. So, blind hiring, that means removing name, reference to gender, age, removing dates, even removing names of schools, and also implementing, as I mentioned, standardized questions for each candidate, and not to stray from that questioning, to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to answer the same question, so you can really put them on a equal playing field. And then I think one of the best things that you can do when it comes to assessing candidates is a pre-interview skill assessment test. It's just a great way to ensure that applicants are suitable for the job and that there's no bias involved when you're bringing people in just to interview from what you're seeing on paper.
I think you brought up some really great points there, especially kind of going through that process of first being aware of the concept of unconscious bias, and perhaps, how you may, unconsciously be thinking these things, and then having those kind of tools to support you throughout the process, whether that be from hiring, like you mentioned, or kind of throughout the kind of organization, through meetings, through leadership, through any kind of like promotion opportunities. This applies to anywhere in the workplace. So thanks for sharing that. Kind of implementing better diversity, equity, and inclusion practices across an organization is not just kind of socially and morally responsible, but it's also been found through many studies that this has a positive impact on the bottom line, as they've shown kind of increased effectiveness with teams who have greater diversity. So beyond just a business perspective, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our personal lives is more important and relevant now than ever. I wanted to hear from you if you're able to share some insight into your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion in both a personal and professional means.
Sure. This is how I see DEI professionally. And this is kind of back to the basics. Diversity is recognizing the preference of differences, or the presence of differences in the workplace. And that can be race or gender, identity, sexual orientation, age, physical ability, or even whether you have children or not. Those are all, that's all part of diversity. And equity is to ensure that the business provides equal possible outcomes for every individual through impartial and fair practices. Okay. And inclusion is about making sure everyone feels a sense of belonging in the workplace, and that each individual feels comfortable to be them true selves inside of the business and the workplace without worrying about any sort of negative outcome. So that's how I see all of that. And I think I often say diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because I think that inclusion and belonging could almost be separate, that they're big enough to talk about on their own. And if you combine all of that together, it represents an ecosystem that not only recognizes the value of diverse voices, but promotes it through leadership and overall best practices. It's a business that emphasizes the importance of belonging, and they focus and maintain standards that ensure the well-being of every single employee, each and every one. And all of those things equal someone being able to come to work, to be seen, to be heard, to feel like they belong, to be recognized. And so it's about businesses implementing programs and initiatives to ensure that the workplace is striving to be the most diverse, the most equitable, and the most inclusive it can be. And personally, what all of that means to me is like, just be a good human. You know, I think we all know what that means, and it's pretty simple. Include people, call on people who don't ask questions, treat everyone as individuals. You know, as a people leader, one of my core values, I would say, is you know, the platinum rule versus the golden rule, which is the golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated, but the platinum rule is to treat others as they want to be treated. And I think that's where we need to level up. Not everybody wants to be treated the way you are, and not everyone has the same experiences that you've had. So we need to understand each person individually and make sure they feel represented and that they can just show up as they are.
I really like that distinction, and how you kind of broke it down. Sometimes, you know, oftentimes DE&I is kind of clumped in together, but it's nice to have that kind of distinction between the three, and then adding belonging as well is you know, something that's kind of the value add to that as well. And yeah, I like that, how you called out the kind of the gold standard and the platinum standard, because not everybody wants to be treated the way you want to be treated, as you mentioned, but everyone comes with kind of their own unique perspective and you know, expectations as well of how they want to be treated in the workplace.
Yeah, belonging is it's just so important, in my opinion, because it's very personal and emotional, and people, most people want to go to work and do the best job that they can. They want to be advocated for, they want to be set up for success, they want to feel like they matter and that they're heard. And so I think it's just so important that organizations put as much effort as they can into just advocating for their people.
Yes, definitely. So I wanted to explore our Women's Day theme of embracing equity a little bit further. For me, this is kind of similar to what you said, the idea of providing fair opportunities to individuals while taking into account their unique perspective and their kind of diverse lived experience. So what does equity of all types bring to an organization?
I've used this example before when explaining equity, and I'm going to use it again right now to discuss. I am a very lucky bonus mom. I've got a bonus kiddo, and she has ADHD, which I also have as well. So we're the same that way. And in supporting her through her schooling, we found, and I'll just focus on a couple of things. We found that we would study at home. She would smash the test. She would do a great job. She knew all the words. She knew the content. But when she would go into the test at school, she would be very nervous and wouldn't do as well. And so we worked with some specialists, and we put together a plan, and then we worked with the school on that plan. And that plan looked like she gets distracted very easily. So how can we fix that? Noises bother her that are in the background. Okay, so we're going to put a panel on her desk, and now she has, she's just in her own kind of bubble. Okay, great, but she still hears things. So what can we do about that? Okay, let's try noise canceling headphones. Great. Time management is always an issue with people who have neurodivergent brains, and so it's almost kind of a double-edged sword there. It's not being able to manage the time and being stressed out that they know that there's a time limit in the first place. So how can we fix that? Well, let's award her more time to do her tests, and if she's finished her test on time, allow her to take a break and come back and review her questions and make sure that she didn't rush through anything, or that she didn't put question 3 and question 4 because she was stressed. And sit closer to the front of the classroom, make sure that she's hearing everything, she's not distracted. So those are some of the actions that were taken, and those actions resulted in her doing better. She's now getting better test scores. But then other people inside of the classroom, other parents, and with children inside the classroom, are saying, well, why does she get headphones? That's actually taking away from my child. Why I want my child to have headphones, and why does she get a pad? I want my child to have panels, and it's unfair that she's getting more time on the test. I want my child to have more time on the test, although their child might be a straight A student. And so I like to give that example of what equity is, which is just laying out the leveling out the playing field. So it becomes often a conversation about resentment that needs to be addressed as well. The child that had the support, my bonus kiddo, she's now happier. She's more successful. She's not distracted. She's not maybe distracting others. She's not falling behind. Now she feels better about herself. She trusts that the school cares about her. She brings her best self every day because she has the opportunity to be successful. So, this is very transferable to us that have, these types of mindsets and how to provide, a supportive work condition to help us thrive. The value of equity is about succeeding together. It's about allowing all employees to fulfill their full potential in the workplace. It's about giving everyone equal opportunity. So we are all happy, engaged, and feel respected and heard. And when we trust our organizations, we do better because we have the opportunity to be better. So the point of this is, when someone else gets an opportunity to be at the same place, as a community, we grow. We all succeed together. And so that to me is why equity is so important. And part of the conversation needs to be about the resentment when it comes to equity and how we can explain it so everyone understands the benefit across the board.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And I like the example that you brought up as well about your bonus child. That's amazing that she's able to kind of like find the tools needed to be able to kind of, work effectively, take these exams effectively. Because I know, from all of us have gone through school, it can place challenges, and exams can be, some people can really accelerate from them, and others, it can be very challenging experience.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And also what you said about kind of like using equity within a workplace, it's more, it does have a distinction from between equity and equality, where equity kind of being giving people those tools to be able to have that kind of equal playing field, like you put it. And it's a joint experience, like everybody does benefit from having or enabling others to have these kind of equal opportunities. The entire organization benefits from everybody having these opportunities, rather than kind of just focusing on kind of having an equal opportunity for people.
That's right. Yeah, it's just good business sense. And again, I'm going to probably talk a lot about just being good humans, wanting those around us to just have the opportunity to succeed like we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of the day, it is just about like being a good human and treating others well as well. So I understand that Zūm Rails is a 2-year-old company with less than 50 employees. So kind of similar to CSPN, we also have a smaller team, less than 50 employees as well. So with this, we have various targets, various priorities that we aim to achieve. So there's always lots of moving pieces. And for us, we focus on working with our clients on delivering services, for example, but also taking into account the importance of kind of having diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of at the forefront as well. So with a smaller kind of newly established company like Zūm Rails, what efforts are you focusing on currently when it comes to DE&I?
I think, for us, the most important way to begin is to start with the pillars, and build the foundation and then scale from there. So, we're starting with our mission statement. Why does the organization exist? What's its purpose and what's its overall intention? And then next, you want that to align and you want to build out your vision statement. So what does the organization strive for? What are the desired long-term results from the company's efforts? And then that makes sure that everyone's aligned. Everyone knows what their North Star is. We're all working in the same direction. From there, what are the core values of the business? Like the set of guiding principles or fundamental beliefs that, that that help a group of people function together and towards a common business goal, and how they achieve that common business goal. So what are your core values, and how do we expect people to act when we're all working towards that North Star? So it's very important to determine, the culture inside of your business, again, to align and make sure everyone understands what direction they're going in, what's the plan and why and how to get there. And I bring that up as part of this because chaos causes confusion, and it causes poor workplace culture. So I think there needs to be that stability. When I'm talking about the foundation, it's building out that stability so everyone feels like there might be chaos, that's just business, but it's controlled chaos. And we know that we're all working towards this goal. And then, how you really need to define how you expect people to conduct themselves while achieving those goals and getting to those goals. And I think that's a big place to invest, efforts for DEI. A quote I like to say, and I misquote a little bit, but culture is defined by the worst behavior you allow. So like I said, no North Star, no alignment, no core values. It becomes a bit of a free-for-all where I find often it's do as I say, not as I do. And that's not a good culture to be in. So really our focus this year is to finalize our mission and our vision and our core values, provide awareness training to our leaders and staff, and to define what our expectations are of a good culture and hold ourselves accountable and our business accountable to meet those expectations. I think a great place to start always is to survey staff, see what's working, see what's not working, and where we need to improve. And I will say to all of you, feedback is a gift. No matter what stage that you're at building out DEI initiatives, you need to find out how your employees feel. And the easiest way to find out what your team wants is just to ask them. I will very boldly say that if you are a senior leader or an executive and you're making the decision with DEI, you're probably doing that from a biased standpoint. I'm not saying that leaders don't understand what it's like to have, workplace or cultural challenges, but they most likely aren't experiencing it at the same level as the frontline or mid-management.
I'm going to be keeping that quote with me that you said. Yeah, and I like that as well. As you said, especially with smaller companies that we both work in, there's always going to be an element of chaos, element of the unknown, but just kind of having that kind of guidance on, what is our culture? How do we react to these different elements? Kind of what is that true North Star, like you were talking about? And also the continuous feedback. Is that sort of how you build culture at your company? Is it sort of like a two-way street, like understanding what employees are saying and sort of integrating that into what those core values are?
That's what we're working on for sure. And I think I think 360 feedback is really important. I think it's, having those one-on-ones, consistent communication, and again, going back to understanding who your team is as an individual. It's not one size fits all, it never is. And you need to understand how people want to have their feedback. You need to understand what their career path goals are, and then try to work towards that. And you just have to approach it differently with every single person. But communication is key, and normalizing difficult conversations is key. I will tell you, for many, many years as a mid-level manager, when I got feedback from my employees, I would take it very personally and I wouldn't handle it well. I'm very self-aware of that now. It felt like I was being attacked, which in reflection, and which I've done a lot of, I don't know how I expected my employees to take that feedback and not feel the same way. So there has to be a level of understanding as a people leader, as an organization. We're not perfect. No one's asking us to be. What they are asking us to be is open and aware and try to affect change. So I do try to give, my team, anyone that's ever reported to me, the security of, tell me, tell it as it is. That doesn't mean that we're not professional. I don't, I still have feelings. I'm still a human, and so are they. But the way we share and what we share matters. And my trick always is, if I have something, and like I said, I'm human and I'm not perfect. And sometimes I think I did it, and someone will be like, oh, you did a really bad job. And rather than, you'll ruin the two-way communication street if you react poorly. So I always have just kind of a little bit of a saying in the back of my mind. If I'm like, oh, I think that hurt, or I feel the sting. Thank you so much for your feedback. I'd like to have, I'm gonna reflect on that over the next couple of days, and I'll come back to you, with my thoughts. So I guess anyone that's listening that happens to be, part of my team or no, or if you ever hear me say that, you got me good. But it's a good thing. That's a good thing. I want to be professionally and respectfully challenged, and I always want to grow and be better.
And having that feedback element is so key for that growth as well. I've definitely reacted similarly to feedback where I thought, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or kind of taking it a little bit to heart. But it is kind of with those feedback that you're able to kind of grow, see where areas of improvements are. And that also applies, not only personally, but also through the DE&I lens as well, on how you can build your company through the effective leadership. So in the fintech world, it's kind of this ever-evolving world and of course, that impacts the experiences of anybody in the industry. For women, there is a unique perspective to that experience that is layered on top of that. So I wanted to get your perspective, if you can share a personal growth story in your experience with being a woman in business, or a woman in the fintech world.
Sure. I'll kind of do a couple little mini stories. The first is growing up inside of the fintech world, and I'm sure growing up with lots of you who will have experienced this, is it was a very male-dominated space. And I felt that I was not recognized in the way that I would hope to have been, and would have some pretty disparaging remarks made, where at the time I laughed it off because that's what you did. You didn't want to seem like you were a bother, or you were speaking out too much, or you're too bossy. But and they're just little comments, but they've always, they're core memories for me. It's going into a meeting and having a meeting and being the only woman in that meeting, and someone, under their breath going, "Who let the skirt in?" And it's supposed to be a joke, but it doesn't feel like a joke. It makes me uncomfortable. Or, being on a call with a group of individuals and explaining that one of our vendors isn't performing to the best of their ability. And while in the middle of explaining very factually the challenges that we were facing, having a senior leader say, "Okay, I think that's enough nagging." Those types of comments, they just, beat you down. And as mentioned, growing up in my career, I didn't see other executive women in this space. And I just didn't feel advocated for. I didn't feel like I was being set up for success. And at some point in time, I just recognized that my values didn't align with the organization. And I knew it was time to move on. And, I look back at some of the things, and I'm embarrassed by conversations that I participated in because I felt like I had to. I was left out of events where, it was a all male sports team extracurricular activity, and that I could go and watch and bring the beer. And, the imposter syndrome was really, really real for me. And I know it's a bit of a catchphrase, but it really was. It really was. And I was terrified to leave, the organization, because I just thought I wasn't any good. I thought I was lucky. I believe, you get conditioned. Someone tells you you're lucky to be sitting at the table. You don't believe that you deserve it. You actually believe that you're lucky. So, you know, in sharing the story where I was reached out to and I had the opportunity to move forward into a different role, I had to take a big leap to know what my worth was. And it was terrifying, but the best thing I ever did for myself. And so, you know, for me, that's the biggest growth I had, was recognizing that I had to get out of my comfort zone, because the comfort zone wasn't comfortable anymore. It was just negative. And my mental health and my well-being, it matters. And so, you know, that was a very big part of my life, and I was able to move forward. And the other story I'll share is about empathy and growing. So I'm sharing very personal stories with you all today. In 2016, my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she sadly passed away in 2018. And leading up to, you know, before she passed, it was very, very challenging. It was a challenging time for my family. It was, you know, exhausting driving back and forth to, you know, where my family was, which was a 5-hour drive. And we all took a toll. And I remember being scared to say that I was at capacity. I couldn't handle anymore. I was managing, you know, an organization, and I just didn't know how to say, you know, I always feel like I'm at 100. I always give 150, and I didn't know how to step away. I was worried that it would hurt my career. I just didn't know what to do. So I went to my CEO and said, I'm not doing okay. I'm not okay. I can maybe give you 75%, but my priority and my effort needs to go to my family and to my own well-being. And he had said to me, we'll take you at 5%. You do what you need to do, and we've got your back. And so that was a huge learning experience for me, to just be brave and, again, normalize difficult conversations and say, I'm not okay. And I was very lucky to have an organization that was going to support me during a really challenging time. And, you know, the result of that, speaking of personal growth, was a new level of empathy. I had never experienced a tragedy before. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And so going through that myself, without question, made me a better leader and a better colleague, and someone who understood more, because I knew what it was like. I knew the stress that it put on you. And I think I was naive to it before. And, you know, being able to understand how I felt, you know, during that time, and apply it to anyone's experience that they're going through, regardless of what it is, I think has just honestly made me a better leader. So those are a couple of my growth stories about, you know, what it's, you know, the fear of being open and being vulnerable and having difficult conversations and taking risks. And you know, luckily for me, you know, I've landed well on the other side.
Thank you so much for sharing some of those personal stories. I think for me, especially for myself, kind of entering the workforce a couple of years ago, so relatively new in my career, it is sort of this daunting experience to know, like, you know, how do I react in certain situations? Like, what is the norm in terms of a professional sense? And having that piece of empathy isn't necessarily something that you consider when you join the workforce, as in it's mostly about, like, you know, how productive you are you able to achieve your targets? But I think kind of adding that element and normalizing that, to your point, that empathy and being vulnerable and asking for assistance, or kind of being open with your manager when needed, I think that's so critical, and something that we should do more of, and that's what make effective leaders as well. So we delved into the idea of equity and inclusivity throughout our conversation. Now, with a deeper understanding of these concepts and how they related to your professional life and personal life, I wanted to ask you, for any of the audience members who are looking to put this theory into practice, do you have any tips on how can our audience become more inclusive and advocate for others in the workplace?
Yeah, just do it. Just start. Just advocate, lift others up. You know, support our people, shout them out. be happy for their success, be a good community. And what I mean by that is, as well as just the obvious, is don't participate in talking poorly about other employees. It's something I still see all the time. I was speaking with another group today, and the gentleman on the panel had said he for she and she for she, and I thought that was really great. Where there should be advocacy everywhere, that we should have allies across, or how however you identify. So don't participate in putting others down. If you take issue with somebody's work, speak with them directly. Or if you can't, speak with your manager, because you just never know what someone else is going through, and really it's not our business. So I always say it's my responsibility is to lead through my professional life with integrity, and it's none of my business what other people think about me if I know I'm doing the right thing. And so we just often will make assumptions about other people's situations or their work, and unless it affects you poorly, and in that case, I'm not saying don't say anything. For sure, advocate for yourself if it's causing conflict, but do it in a professional way. Don't do it in the around the coffee machine and talking poorly. That stuff hurts, and it really does exclude people and make them feel like they don't belong. And I think inclusiveness has to do with really just including people. So when you're having that meeting, call on the people that aren't speaking up because maybe they don't feel comfortable. When you're doing the outing, invite everybody. Just do it. Just invite everyone. Include all of the people. And I think the other thing I would say is, if you don't know about the subject, then it's okay just to listen. We don't have to comment on everything, especially the things that we don't understand or we haven't experienced. We can just hear what other people think and learn about their experiences, and then try to educate ourselves. I think that there's this culture of getting involved, and not always for the right reasons, to be heard, even though you may not be an expert on what you're speaking to. I don't speak on topics that I'm not an expert on. I understand that you may have an opinion about something, but for me, especially in the workplace when I'm advocating for others, I just listen to people's experiences, and it's helped me grow a lot.
I think that's so key as well. As an individual, we only know so much, and the only way we can kind of learn is to understand from others, learn what their perspectives are like, and then hopefully use that in a positive way to kind of like pave the way for how we act in the future.
I should have mentioned mentorship too. I forgot. And I should never forget that. Mentorship is always so important. I was so lucky to have great mentors throughout. And I had what I like to call reverse mentors as well. So I had some pretty horrible bosses in my day, and they really taught me what not to do. So, you have good mentors, you have mentors, and then you have reverse mentors, and then you take that and you try to support it. So, to try to take that and support others with it rather. So, for me, I'm involved in a lot of professional mentoring. I do, some private mentoring, coaching to help support everyone I can. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. Why? Let me share my wisdom, my challenges, and the way that I found to move forward to try to help elevate others, so they don't have to go through those same things.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah, kind of breaking that cycle and kind of providing the best practices for the people you mentor. And so for those kind of mentorships, are you somebody who kind of how do you find these mentors? Is there like a formal process that you go through? Is it just a matter of kind of like speaking to somebody that you've connected with? So how do you go about finding mentors?
There's a lot of great programs that exist, professional women's programs that I'm involved in, but just in general programs. I think you could look at mentorship, business mentorship program, and often you'll find something. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. Organizations, I think, are getting better at building mentorship. And if your workforce doesn't have a mentorship program, ask the leader, say, hey, these are the skills that I'd like to grow. This is where I'd like to go with my career. Is there someone I can shadow? Is there someone I can speak to, on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to be able to get that information, directly from them and hear. And then I do think there's a lot of, and depending on everyone's situation, of course, workplace coaches as well. So I think you can really find that. And then you can always just ask. Sometimes, you may see someone on LinkedIn and go, hey, that person is doing my dream job, reach out. The worst thing that'll happen is that they don't respond or they say no, but maybe they'll be able to guide you in a direction and say, hey, I don't have this space, but this is a great organization, or you should try to reach out to this person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great reminder. The power of asking is so strong. And yeah, to your point, the worst that they can say is not interested or not at all. So yeah, the power of asking is great. So we're kind of wrapping up here. I want to leave some time for questions as well. We've had a great conversation. It was so lovely to hear about all of your experiences and your involvement with DE&I. And so I wanted to, before we go into the questions, as a wrap up, do you have any advice or last comments that you would like to share with the group?
Sure. I think something that's really important when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is organizations investing. And I say this all the time. If it is important to your organization to build DEI initiatives or to support DEI initiatives, they're going to invest in it. You invest in what's important to you. So I'm not saying that volunteers are bad. I mean, of course, volunteers are great, but those volunteers have a day-to-day role. They have another job, and it's unrealistic to expect them to move the needle alone. There has to be an investment from the organization. You pay for sales reps, we pay for software, we pay for the best CRMs and IVRs. But if you're not willing to invest in the well-being of those who are selling or who are using those softwares or who's being on the front line, you're just going to miss the mark every time. You're going to lose talent. You absolutely will have attrition, not only from your staff, but from your client base, because they feel, happy employees equal happy clients. And you just lose, trust in your brand. So I think the other thing I would say is if you don't know where to start, survey, just survey, it costs nothing. Ask the people inside your organization what initiatives they'd like to see, what's working, what's not working. Make an action plan, and then, be responsible, for that action plan. Everything doesn't have to be done in one day. You can say, okay, we're going to survey and we're going to take the top 3 initiatives and we're going to build a plan, and then we're going to share that plan every month or every couple of months. And these don't have to be high cost. I understand that, I understand the state of the economy for all of us, and that, the budgets are not easy, but there is minimal budget that has a huge ROI by just taking the time to care about our employees, invest in their well-being, building networks, making sure they're seen, they're heard, and you can get some free survey software anonymously and send it out and find out what's ticking with inside your business. And as I've said, feedback is a gift. You'll get everything you need by just asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I know SurveyMonkey is one of those tools that is free, that is commonly used, where you can just gather feedback. And I know for myself, I'm a consultant in the customer experience area, and so often we see customer experience is so integrated into employee experience, because to your point, developing employees who are empowered, who have the tools needed, who feel supported, also results in better experience, better services delivered, products delivered to the customer side as well. So
Absolutely. The NPS matters. And when you go out and you survey your base, and then you see that you have, you hit the nail on the head. You're going to have high results for an eNPS as you will for your NPS. If you're surveying your base and they're happy, most likely the majority of your employees are happy. And you will notice a shift if, it's just clearly relatable. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. I know we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to jump into some of the questions that the audience had. So I saw people adding their questions into the Q&A feature. So if anybody has any questions with the remaining time we have, please feel free to add to kind of the Q&A at the bottom of the panel. But we do have somebody here asking a question. They are asking, what's an example of a common assumption that you uncovered in your journey?
Ooh, an assumption that I have?
That you uncovered in your journey.
I'm going to get myself in trouble. I think a common assumption that I uncovered probably had to do with ageism. And that was when I've been in the space for 20 plus years. So I'm coming up on, it's karma. No, I do. I think I had, when I heard, when I really listened to myself, when I was going into meetings and meeting people, I would sometimes think on both ends. This person might be really young to be doing this role, or this person, I wonder if this person's too experienced to be doing this role. And what I learned was neither of those things are true. If someone's sitting in front of you and they're interviewing, it's because they want to be there. And all that should matter is the skill set that they have. So I think that's something that it was very unconscious. It wasn't something that I was purposely saying, I'm not going to hire. But when I started to do my awareness training, I think ageism was something that came into play for me that I'm very happy I'm self-aware of and doesn't exist for me anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think so often when we think about DE&I, we think about kind of race, we think about gender, but not necessarily ageism. So I think that's also something for me in the past, recent years that I've been kind of coming to think about as well. And yeah, to your point, it's not necessarily, how much experience they have, how old they are, but, are they able to do the work effectively?
Yeah, and that's where the skill assessment testing really is great. And I think what would happen with me in the past is I would, I'm a bit of a chatter. So I would get into an interview and I would have this really great enthralling conversation and I wouldn't answer, or I wouldn't ask 3 or 4 of the questions, which is, it's just, you're not giving someone the opportunity of that even playing field. Just so just standardizing some of that where, hey, these are the questions and everyone has to pass this test. Everyone has to do this test. And based on the way you respond to those questions, and if you have the skills, that's how you're making the decision. And I prefer doing the skill test before. I know there's a lot of people who do it after. I prefer before. And that you make just a rule to say, okay, they have to get this percentage or higher if we're going to interview them. So it doesn't become about, I met the person, I like the person, that you have a bias towards them for whatever reason. It's, hey, these are the rules that we're gonna, these are our boundaries, and they can't come in the door unless they are at this level. And once they come in the door, we have to ask these 10 questions.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that approach of kind of assessing skills first before having any biases around, do I like the person or not? So a couple more questions here. Mentors and coaches are awesome resources, but can you also add on how to get sponsors?
Maybe, do you know, can you define what you mean by sponsors? Whoever wrote that?
Yes.
Or
if you want to add to the chat, I think it's Katali, or if you want to get off mute.
Just to make sure I'm not making any assumptions.
Okay, no worries. Maybe when we, as we wait for that, we can go to a different question.
Sure.
Can you please share which survey to participate in to identify your unconscious biases?
Oh, I don't remember what it was, but you can literally go in and do a Google search and say unconscious bias surveys or quizzes. I feel like the one I did was, I think it's AIHR. like I have something written on the wall. I'm trying to see if I can find it, but I don't see. It's too far. Academy in Human Resources might have been the one that I did. But you know, sorry to say, do a Google search. I'm sorry that I don't have the reference in front of me, but there are a lot of great references that you can use to go in and just say, you know, what is my unconscious bias? What is unconscious bias? And, you know, coupled with that, awareness training. Awareness training really will cover all of it. And there's a lot of different types of organizations that offer awareness training. And I believe LinkedIn Learning does have awareness training as well. So I know a lot of organizations will participate in some kind of learning and development systems. Check there as well for awareness training.
Yeah, there's a lot of online resources for that. Yeah, and I think LinkedIn Learning, they've really boosted the amount of content that they have on there. So that's probably an area to look for as well. So just got a response about the sponsor. So sponsor for them. Yes, thank you. Would be someone at a company that can help you get in or advance your career, but taking more of an active role on advocating for you.
So I would say your leader should be your sponsor. So if we're talking about someone that can get you inside of an organization that you're not already inside of, for me, that's all about networking. And I know that people are shy, and I know it's for whatever reason, it's often women are really shy to reach out to people inside their network to say, hey, I see you're connected to this person inside of LinkedIn. Would you please do an introduction? For me, I have zero issue doing that. Anyone that's in my, you know, that I know that I can do an intro for, I will. Because again, the worst thing that happens is you just don't get a response, or there's no opportunity at that time. But I think networking is really important, and just reaching out to your network and see who's connected to individuals inside that organization. Don't be shy. Again, worst thing that'll happen is that it doesn't move forward. And I always suggest that if there's a role that you're really interested in, apply for that role and then network. So you can say, hey, I saw this great role. Here's the link. I was really hoping that you could mention to your HR team that I've applied. I'd really appreciate it. The other thing, I had someone wonderful mention to me that you should always be cultivating your network, regardless of whether you're looking or not. You know, every quarter, you know, depending how big your network is, just reach out to your, you know, your favorite people, and reach out to the decision makers and the executives and the leaders inside your network and say, hey, how's it going? How's it, you know, how are your kids? How was your vacation? How was your holidays? Just continue to keep that conversation going. Cultivating your network is very powerful. And then when it's time for you to move forward, it's not just this kind of like cold call. It's, hey, you have this warm relationship with these individuals, and they're going to be advocating for you because you have that relationship. Inside of the organization, I would say, I strongly believe your sponsor should be your leader. And what I mean by that is, with your two-way conversations, and you as an individual who's reporting into someone, it's really your responsibility to say, this is how I want to grow. What do you think I need to get there? And as much as we would like our leaders to be like, you're perfect, I'll move you to this new role, it's not going to happen. We have to take ownership of our own success. And so being able to have those conversations with your leader and say, hey, I'd really like to move to a team lead role. Do you think I have the skills now? No? Okay, thank you. What skills do you think I need? These ones? Great. What plan can we put in place that I can work towards those skills so I can grow, I can be promoted, I can be looked at for that next opportunity? Because it's not your leader's responsibility to have a job open for you, but it is their responsibility to get you ready for the job when it opens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a common theme that we've talked about is kind of that idea of open dialogue, open communication. And it can be a little bit daunting to, build those relationships, get that feedback. But it is also so essential because you never know what opportunities will pop up down the line and where those relationships will be beneficial.
That's right. Plan ahead. So, as they say, day one or one day, like today's the day, make today be day one. and start to work towards what you want. Take control of that.
I like
Advocates for your success.
I like that a lot.
Your own advocate, you know, it's great to have everybody around you, but you got to drive yourself as well.
Definitely. All right, so I know we just have a minute left. We ended it so perfectly. Just one last comment here from somebody in the audience. I'll just read it out here. It's so important for managers to provide a trusting environment so that employees feel that they can stand up and share if they're not okay. So I'm really glad that Tara was in a trusting environment and could be very vulnerable. So thank you so much. I know that that's one comment here about kind of how appreciative we are for your time. And I'm sure everybody in the audience feels the same way as well. And just before we part ways, I wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us today. I know you have a lot of commitments, so this is really great that you're able to join us to have this great conversation and dialogue. And just to be able to share your perspective and experiences with our community is so valuable. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to you, Tara, and a huge thank you for the audience. Thank you for submitting those questions. So everyone, final thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of the International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think my LinkedIn was shared, so feel free to connect. Happy to have further conversations, and just so pleased to be able to partner with the network, and love everything that you do. And just thank you so much for the opportunity to have such a good conversation today.
Oh, thank you, Tara.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.